Running with the Devils, and we are back. Oh, it feels so good to be back talking college football and the ASU Sun Devils here in 2023. The 2023 college football season just a couple weeks away, and we're got everything ASU talking here. I'm the Rhino Ryan Knowles, as always. With me, my partner in crime, Big John Caldwell,
Hey.
and Big John. Feels good to be back. Talk a new era in Sun Devil football. Kenny Dillingham taking over the reins of our Sun Devils. We'll certainly get into plenty of that. We'll be talking everything Dilly here on RWD throughout the season. Just a little kind of our week 0 season preview here. We're going to cover some of the topics from the off season. Of course, as always, we have plenty to talk about here on Running with the Devils. And welcome, as always, welcome. As I said before, welcome to the 2023 college football season. It's kind of a season of transition here, Big John. Of course, the ASU Sun Devils making the move officially over to the Big 12 with some of the other Pac-12 teams. Lot to get into. We'll certainly be talking about that, the big move. We'll be getting into some of our expectations for the Kenny Dillingham era. We'll be talking the team. We'll be talking a little bit about the schedule. Plenty to talk about here on the first show of 2023 here, Big John. What are you most looking forward to this 2023 season?
I've got everybody wants to talk about. They always like to say how many wins. I like to focus on what's different about this team. I know we're going to be better on defense. I know we're going to score more points. Whether we're going to be able to beat teams like SC, Oregon, Utah, it is still a question in my mind.
Yes.
The heavy hitters. Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet. But here's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about this is a very different kind of team, folks, than what we had last year, and the way it sort of degraded over the Herm Edwards period regime. We have a group of coaches and a group of and it starts from the top. Kenny is infectious with his energy. He's got this team. They've all bought in. I see a lot more action going on out there. They're busier. They're better athletes. We are going to be better athlete than last year. I fully expect we'll be better on defense, and that we will be. We will score more points. Now, how we're going to get those points, or how we're going to spread the ball around, those are all sort of nuances to the game. But Dillingham has a plan, and he's surrounded himself with good people, good Arizona, a lot of head coaching experience. These people are all in. I'm telling you, I've been around since watching this group since '78 in the Cush era. This is the best group of coaches we've had from a recruiting standpoint and a teaching standpoint since the Cush era. So, folks, we got to give them some time. We got to be patient. We're not going to win 9 games this year. Okay, it could happen if the ball bounces the right way, but we'll get into predictions probably a little later next week's show. But I'm excited because it's a new regime with a new approach to this thing. I tell you, the one thing I saw at Camp T for 3 days, intensity. And these kids are not afraid to work hard. They're not afraid of the kind of getting beat. Kenny's got them sort of in this mindset that you're going to get beat, you're going to lose, but it's how you respond to that matters. And the second thing is a huge accountability thing going on out there. You screw up, we're going to run it again, and you're going to do up downs, and you're going to run. Okay, you're going to run to the end zone, run back. There's a lot of accountability. And by the way, the accountability starts at the coaches first. And this started from the Iguano era. There was a lot of he kind of flipped that whole accountability thing around.
The interim era.
Yes, and the neat thing is they retained him, and from that, Kenny saw that accountability thing. He says, "That's good. We're going to build on that." So there's accountability at the coaches level and at the player level. I love it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things. That change in philosophy, I think, is one of the biggest changes I think that you're going to see this year. He's not afraid to call a guy out. He's not afraid to make a
he's calling the whole offense out.
Make it about one side of the ball during his press conference. As far as saying they suck, they need to get better. We all need to get better. That kind of thing. And we like to say here on RWD, you give us 30 minutes, we give you the world of Arizona State football. and we're going to give you the world here. And with our kind of our expectations coming into this season, I think we'll talk about win predictions next. In the next show when we get our full week preview, we'll preview the Southern Utah Thunderbirds, the week one opponent. We'll do all of that in the coming show. But we did want to give you kind of an overview of things that have happened inside the program since the end of last season, because we didn't do a spring show this year. Both of our schedules really didn't allow it. But just season one of the Kenny Dillingham era. Kenny Dillingham, of course, the first ASU football coach to be an alumnus of Arizona State.
That's right.
I think is very, that's really interesting. You talked about him bringing in some Arizona guys. He retained Sean Aguano, the former Chandler High School head coach, and he's been in the ASU program. This will be his fourth season now. That's really great to see. But other than him, they kept Marvin Lewis as a special advisor, and then Joe Connolly, the sports performance coach. Everybody else is brand new on this staff, but I do like some of the moves that he made as far as bringing in Charlie Regal, his former high school head coach from Chaparral, who you mentioned guys with head coaching experience. He was the head coach at Idaho State before coming in. He's the head coach and special teams coordinator. And you got Bo Baldwin, who won a national championship at Eastern Washington a few years ago as the OC. He had success working with Cal Golden Bears. One of the biggest coups, I think, of the offseason was getting Brian Ward from Washington State to be the new defensive coordinator. He really turned that Cougar defense around. And it's funny to say Cougar defense without more lanes than the I-17. They were actually a great defense last year, very attacking. If you watch that game against ASU, I mean, they were making Emory Jones run for his life half the time. And then you get some of those ASU alums like Vince Amy, the D line coach, was part of that '96 Rose Bowl team. Jason Mons, another ASU alumnus and Arizona high school coaching legend at Scottsdale Saguaro.
Head coach.
Yep. One of his former players and another Sun Devil legend, DJ Foster, is a manager of player development, as part of the support staff. And then I like that he went and got some guys with some Texas connections.
Yes.
And Rashad Samples, the wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator.
He's working hard.
Yep. Brian Carrington, the cornerbacks coach. Both those guys have already started to pull some recruits out of Texas.
Don't forget,
been really great to see.
He kept Bobby Wade too.
Oh yeah, that's right. As an analyst, yeah.
As an analyst, very talented guy, very respected guy in football. But he relates to. I know that he relates to the players really well, and they really like having him around. So that's been great to see. So a lot to like about this new coaching staff. It's very young, very very energetic. They can relate to the players really well. Lots of go up and down. A lot of things to like about this new staff. Not a lot of. I don't think there's there's some nepotism there as far as Charlie Regal coming in. Dilly bringing him in as his former head coach, but that's a guy who's been around the game for a long time. He was a recruiting coordinator at Cal. Pulled a lot of Arizona high school kids to go to Berkeley when he was there. Yep.
He's worked with the U of A. There's I think he's earned this spot where he's at. So there's on the surface it may look like some nepotism, but Charlie Regal I think is a guy that can come in and be a credit to this staff.
Yeah, and while he's coaching special teams, if you watch him, he's all over the place out there.
And he's also the assistant head coach.
Yeah.
And, I think he's going to definitely have a big hand in recruiting as well. So and I just like what he's done as far as bringing in guys. Some of these he's reached out to Kenny Dillingham has reached out to a lot of the alumni and a lot of former great players, had them come in and speak to the kids. So reinstituting the Camp T, the Camp T scrimmage. It was the first time we were both up there last weekend. This was the first time that they had gone to Camp T for more than a day since 2019.
That's right.
Now, COVID had something to do with that. The weather, there were other factors,
Yeah, yeah,
but they didn't really let. I like that they didn't really let that bother them. They were still able to go up there for the better part of a week, let the kids bond, learn about some of the traditions, put on the scrimmage for the fans, just enjoy the cool pines, kind of and unplug a little bit as
yeah.
they try to grow together as a team. And you kind of need that time with 30 transfers, 51 new players on the roster. There was a lot of turnover from last season, which isn't a bad thing after a 3-win season, but you still got to be able to come together if you're going to hopefully win more games than you lose this year.
I thought that Camp T was. I think Kenny grew up here.
Yeah.
Enough coaches around here know that it's not just. It's yes, it's great for the fans, but it's also great for the traditions, having a
Yeah.
culture. There's no place in college football like that, and people. They may hate the grind, they may hate the crappy the crappy beds and all that, but you look back on that.
Facilities, yes.
Yeah, you look back 10, 20, 30 years from now, and everybody thinks of it very fondly. And it's part of our identity. We need more of that around here. The prior,
You ever been to camp? You ever been camping? You ever
yeah,
done any of that? It's not easy all the time. It's
no,
you're even then when you're staying in a cabin, you're roughing it a little bit as
yeah.
far as not having great a Wi-Fi reception or whatever. It's not, but it's not the end. It's not the end of the world. I know to these kids it is, but it's really not. And the fact that they were able to, they were able to just do simple things like play games, play cards,
talk to one another,
just talk to look each other in the eye face to face when you talk to somebody. There's nothing wrong with that for a couple days out of your life.
Yeah, meet some people, new people. Kenny's whole philosophy is how to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations, and this fit perfectly into that whole philosophy, and how to be resilient to what life throws at you, and not mope and complain, and if there's complaining going on, Kenny's driving it right out, and I'll tell you, there's just no time.
And he actually lists off the number of players who were complaining that day.
That's right. That's right.
When he talks to the media, I mean, yeah, he puts it out there. He there's a lot of transparency with him. I think that's another great thing about it that I like about his, since he took over, he's not afraid to, call some guys out, put them on the spot, make them, if they don't hold themselves accountable, he's sure as hell going to do it. So I like what he's doing. He's making these kids grow up. He's making them act like adults. You kind of have to act that way if you're going to play football at a high level.
Yeah. No, Herm clearly got, there was not the same accountability. There was nice, and the kids at a certain point start taking you for granted, start taking the whole, and you tend to lose kids after a while. The nice part is
kids are smart. They see through you when you're not real with them.
Well, yeah, and at the end of the year last year, I remember I went with TJ Foster. I took him from the Saguaro Thanksgiving practice. We both went over there, and I made sure he got up to address the team before they shoved off for U of A. And the neat thing was, the bad thing was, Kyle Soley came over to me and said, "I can't believe how many of these guys have checked out." I think we checked about that as the season went on. More and more guys checked out. I seriously.
You lose 9 games in a year. There are going to be guys who checked out, and we saw. I mean, Daniel Ngata didn't even play. The last game of the season.
That's right.
The Markham twins. They, AMF as soon as Herm quit. So, I mean, and you knew that was going to happen. So you had to have turnover. You had to have turnover on the roster. You didn't want guys who didn't want to be here. Another thing too that I like what Dilly's done. He's not afraid to kick guys off the team if they're not buying into the culture. I totally respect what he did. Kicking Isaiah Johnson off because he's late to meetings. Kicking off Juwan Mitchell because he's acting entitled and not doing his, being willing to take coaching and do his job. There's a reason this was his 3rd program. This is, those are things you got to get those kick those cancers out of your program if you want to make legitimate change going forward. So,
and I'll tell you this:
kudos to you, coach. I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah, and I think it's already paying dividends. You look at the 2024 and 25 classes, we're getting
Yeah,
25 commits already. And this is with the NC2A still shadow hanging over us.
yeah,
It does not seem like this staff is is worried about that, and I think it's because they've seen what's happened at Tennessee, Louisville, Air Force. These things are not, what U of A got out of basketball. This is
yeah.
not going to be the death blow.
No,
We may lose a few visits, maybe a scholar or two, but this is not going to be the end, catastrophic by any
some
means. And so,
fines and
yeah,
stuff like that. Because yeah, and
well,
I never thought it was going to be all that serious. And the fact that they're getting the types of players that they are,
yeah,
I think even though they came in kind of late and weren't
yeah,
super successful with their recruiting this year, I think they
yeah,
still got some decent players at good positions.
they did, and
And it starts, and we'll talk about the quarterback position here in a minute. But just funnily enough, here with the coaches, I like that they're getting their hands dirty a little bit with trying to grow these players up,
yeah,
and trying to make them into players that they can be, because players will respond to good coaching. If a coach will actually work with them, show them how it should be done. Kids are going to listen when they see results, and
that's it.
I think that that's that obviously it has to play all itself out on the field, but so far I've been very impressed with what I've seen from the coaches, and I think they're doing a terrific job here in their first preseason.
What Something I haven't seen in 30, 40 years, um, is in practice when there's a great defensive play. A linebacker comes up and just stuffs somebody in the hole, or everybody just does their job up front. I haven't seen an ASU coach, jump into the pile like I have this year. It's going on, and it's so freaking cool and fun. I mean, the kids love it. The kids on the sideline when they're trying to simulate, fourth and short,
Yeah.
or goal line, they all jumping down, and make their own crowd noise. It's really different, man.
Those are all good signs that the players have bought in
Yeah,
too. So
yeah.
that's very encouraging, I think.
Hmm.
And this is something. I mean, obviously we got to see how it all plays out on the field. But it seems like the coaches are doing and saying all the right things, and it feels like the kids are buying in. And we'll kind of see how things go through this first season. I mean, nothing gets kids to buy in more than wins.
Hmm.
Um, and but I think that if they continue to do things this way, they continue to work hard and continue to develop, because there are still quite a few young players on this team at key positions. Even
Right.
though I think the depth is a lot better on the team than it was this time last year. Um, we'll kind of see how things play out. And, but that I think that if they get, I think and I've told people this. One of the most common, probably the most common question that I've got is, from people this year is how's the Kenny Dillingham going to do? How many wins do you think they're going to get? I
Yeah.
kind of set the bar at 6 wins, and that's kind of what I
Yeah.
see for this team. And that to me is this program moving forward. That's twice as many as you had last year. It may not seem like
Yeah.
a lot, twice as many as you had last year. Get you to a bowl game, get you those extra practices, and I think it's definitely
Yeah.
a stepping stone. It's a building block to where you want to be in, as we mentioned, 24 and 25 going into the new conference.
Yeah, Vegas has us at 4.5, which is a push to 5. But I'll tell you this: and I would have said after spring ball, that probably would have been probably about right. But after camp, I'm kind of falling in where in this idea that 6, that really I'm kind of a 7. It may be the right. I mean, you probably we're going to get lucky in one of these games, and win a 7th. And quite frankly, it's deserved, because I don't think it's going to be because of lack of effort out there. These guys are going to go out, and they're going to ball out. They love they relate well to their coaches. They all seem like they're getting coached up really well. So listen, everybody likes to talk about that number, and I know why. There's betting and all that involved. I'm not a bettor, so it's never for me that. This is
Yeah, and
always
I'm
we're
not either. That's kind of what I see as far as as far as the bar, as far as where I think this team should be with 8 home games this year.
Yeah, very favorable home
schedule that they have. I mean, granted, they are going to be facing some tough teams.
Yeah.
But I still see this team. If they are serious about competing going forward, they just gotta come out with a couple wins that maybe they shouldn't have gotten.
If you come out
maybe get a little lucky, but if they can do that and they can, just go out there and show that they've been able to put what they've learned together
mm-hmm.
and come together as a team, I think that 6 wins is certainly possible.
They're doing some cool things. I mean, today, Kenny got after, I think it was today or yesterday, they're playing around with their cadence, and their and how the ball's being snapped and what their little cue is for, the guard touching up next to the center. And after a while, this stuff gets very predictable as to what, the defense starts picking up on all the cues and all the, all of the tells. And they're changing that stuff up regularly now. So it's going to be hard for teams to make book or study film on what we're doing, because they seem to understand that they need to change up that little community. Because when it's loud, we ran into this, places like BYU and Utah where it's loud and we don't get the ball off correctly, and we have bad snaps. We just bad execution on lots of offsides. I think you're going to be way better in that regard. And I'm very impressed with that. Our starting O-line. We'll go through numbers or players maybe more in depth next week. But
right.
But yeah, there's a seasoned group of guys up front. I'm really pleased with the ones on offensive line, folks. The game's obviously run in the trenches. Our ones on the defensive line. We actually guess have a little bit of depth on the defensive line. It's one of the stronger groups.
That's what I said. Yeah, I'm like the depth. Compared to this time last year, we were a little bit concerned that a couple of injuries on either side of the line would spell doom for this team, and ultimately it did. Mm-hmm. But yeah, absolutely, I think the depth is totally better, and that's going to be a big key to success this season. So, but yeah, then the other most commonly question that I've gotten is who's going to be the quarterback?
Yeah,
for the Sun Devils, and because
that's easy.
I going into after last season, I would have said Trenton Bourguet all the way, because I felt like he had earned his spot out there. I felt like coming in for Emory Jones and playing the way he did, he certainly earned the position, and he should be he's the incumbent. I felt like he didn't really do anything to lose the job necessarily. And he played hurt for most of last year. So that to me screams a guy who pencil in as the one going in, but it's been a battle through. Even I didn't think it was going to be much of one in the spring because Bourguet played so well in the spring game. I was not impressed by Jaden Rashada. He absolutely played like a freshman in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
But granted, he was just in just fresh out of high school a few months earlier. So and then I really didn't know what to expect from Drew Pine. I mean, he'd done all the right things at Notre Dame, had a good record, put up some nice numbers, but it's been very neck and neck. It's different. If you look at it different day, it's a different guy proving that he should be the one out there, and it's been very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, all at Camp T, and really this whole fall, Trenton has been the one. At camp, Drew started to close that gap, and arguably was getting real close to it. And then he, as we know now, he came off. He ran off to his right, kind of scrambling, and kind of, folks, when you're on the turf, there's little black, little pieces of rubber, and it was very slippery over there. He literally skid on the one leg and fell.
It had rained the night before. So.
Yeah, it was damp, and he slid on that. Got a bad footing over there. Took his. So I guess there's nothing been said since camp about out for 4 to 6 weeks, but he had a small tear.
But we haven't gotten any official word on how long Drew is going to be out, and it's unfortunate because he really did look like he was pulling ahead to be the starting quarterback. But yeah, it looks like he's going to be out at least the first half of the season. But another thing is Jaden Rashada. he's closed the gap. He legitimately looked like a Division I starting quarterback out
Yeah, I'm going to be really cautious, careful about that because at camp, if you had to go by Camp T, they gave the reps to Rashada and to Pine at camp. They wanted to
there.
see more film on them, and once again, while Jaden and Rashada has obviously the big arm, the long
Oh
ball.
yeah,
Everybody likes that, but I can tell you it the second you saw the touchdown that happened over in the left part of the end zone, and it was called back on holding. They went back and went deep again. That second touchdown up at camp, that was a complete fluke. Coben, that was supposed to go to Coben Bourget at about 7 yards outside of the maybe he was about the 5 yard line. He overthrew that, and it went. There was a deep man who caught that, the freshman.
John Charles.
Charles, and if you ever go back and watch it, you and I were there, but I saw Rashada was tapping his chest, going, my bad," to Coben, and he got lucky. So yeah, he's got the big arm, and truly, he's the future of the program. But let's remember, Trenton Bourget will be back next year too. He has that year.
He's a junior. Yeah.
Well, and he's already graduated, but he's got the COVID year to play out. But I think it's great. I think you got the future is bright. We have good young talent here. So it's going to keep sharpening our program. Jaden brings a different element to the game. He's got to learn touch. The entire time at Camp T, he had a ball blocked. He had a ball. He
talking about Rashada or
Rashada, yeah,
yeah.
And I mean there was Trenton was never in, nobody ever got to Trenton come around the edge. He always escaped, got the ball out. He can get the ball out really much quicker than anybody else. Still, he has the fact he can make a one-man read and he understands the defense. Pine was still all the way through. What got better that last day was it was one read and he was getting it too. Even Rashada, one read and he was making great reads. But your most consistent quarterback from a read and getting the ball into the right people is still Trenton Bourget at this, in my opinion. And so Kenny has a tough choice. Yeah, that is, and a lot of people say, do you throw away that sure thing that the incumbent who had 70% completion at last year, who had great numbers per game if you just look at the games he played in, or do you say, damn it, let's just try to develop a quarterback for the future. I think
Rashada has a higher ceiling.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think coaches want to win now. This is still a performance-driven business, and wins and losses matter. So I think when at the and there, we'll all know this around Thursday of next week, folks. That's when Kenny has said he'll make his decision for Southern Utah. And it's let's put it this way: it's going to be so it's going to be a long season, and there's this distinct possibility that that Trenton will start, and that if the production is not there during the year, you may see Rashada come in a little bit later in the season. That's all. That's just what's in my head right now. But I really do think that Trenton will be the starter right now.
Yeah, and if for some reason he doesn't perform, if he doesn't repeat the success that he had last season, yes, you probably will see Jaden Rashada at some point this year.
Yeah.
Rashada, I mean, he's got the big arm, but he still has to learn touch. He kind of has to learn how to drop it in the bucket, so to speak.
Yeah. He hits a lot of people in the chest and bounces out.
Yeah, exactly. And whether it's throwing the short, throwing the intermediate, he's just throwing it as hard as he can every single time. He kind of reminds me of Kevin Cobb that way. Kevin Cobb, great arm talent, couldn't throw with touch at all to save his life. And, everything was just way too hard coming out. And you got to be able to throw that change up, throw the off speed, take something off of it.
Yeah,
give your receiver the chance, and also not let the DB make a play on it. So
this corner phase when you drop it in on a man, over the DB's head.
And I'm kind of with you. I feel like going into week one, Trenton Bourget gives you the best chance to win. Yeah, Rashada, he's got the higher ceiling, but he's so raw and underdeveloped right now. Yeah, he's a great athlete, great arm talent. He's absolutely your quarterback of the future. Looking at it right now. But to me, Trenton Bourget needs to be the guy going in week one until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, if we can come out of those first 4 games, 3-1 going into Cal. I think we will beat Cal. I think there's a really good chance we'll be 4-1 coming out of Cal if we play our cards right. Now, the back half of this, and I think we'll beat Colorado. It's the back half of this season that's is the gauntlet. You know,
Yeah.
Washington State, Utah, UCLA, Oregon, and Arizona. So we'll get lulled into it. Wow, we're really good because we beat. You know, well, you know,
It's happened before. Yeah.
it's happened before. Yes. So anyway,
So, yeah.
I just there's a real nice opportunity to develop players in the way the systems the schedule's laid out this year, and we just can't get complacent.
No.
And the problem like every year we say, folks, it's about depth, you know, because you're going to get hurt. And at the end of last year, we had a lot of injured players, and there are a lot of new guys had to step up. But I do like our depth in some positions. There's a couple of there's one weak group that I'm worried about, which is the linebackers. But as far as depth, but I am, but other than that, I think we've got a great wide receiver room, great tight end room. Heck, I like our defensive line room.
And we'll go into this in depth in next week's show. You know, we'll go position by position as we always do.
Yeah.
And give you the lowdown on everything going into the 2023 season. But we got to talk about the elephant in the room, the conference shakeup for 2024. This, of course, was a huge story. You know, teams jumping ship, going to the other conferences for, you know, basically the big payday. You know, Pac-12 unable to get a new media deal done that was you know made everybody happy. And you know, it just that's max exodus. It's happening. It's becoming a reality. ASU, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, all moving to the Big 12. Colorado going back to the Big 12, which they left back in 2010.
Yeah, so they can lose even more games now.
Yeah, Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA to the Big 10. It's gonna, you know, those travel budgets. Oof, it's gonna be a little rough going to the Midwest and back east all the time. Hey, enjoy that trip to Rutgers, by the way. Good times. Is this the end of the Pac-12 period? As I know, it's the end of the Pac-12 as we know it, but with Cal, Stanford, Washington State, Oregon State now making up the Pac-4. Yeah. And I mean, there has been talk of other schools joining the conference.
Oh, Klykoff's out there working.
Is this the end of the Pac-12? You know, as forever and always.
Well, it comes down to money, and it comes down to eyeballs, and who will watch your product on television. But it does hurt you when you had a Larry Scott who wouldn't, you know, at the time wouldn't get you into the largest segment of the direct TV viewership, and you know. And he was right that it was a dying format, but at the time, it was still 20-something% of the market.
It was absolutely viable at the time. Nobody was cutting the cord. Nobody was doing, just going simply to streaming at the time.
Yeah, streaming. He was right in that streaming's coming on the way it is. Well, yeah. But the strategy, and we'll get into who's to blame, but the strategy really should have been pick the best streamer, the best broadcaster, the best cable. Those three have spread it around. And
most of these schools are getting about $30 million from the new conferences that they're joining. Yeah. They could have gotten 30 from ESPN a couple years ago. It's just coming out today. You know, they could have gotten 30 million, but they want the Pac-12 presidents. They got greedy. They wanted 50 million.
Yeah,
per school for these from ESPN. ESPN was like, see ya.
Well, there's two ways to make 50 million. That is what they give you, and then what it costs you to put your own network out there.
Sure.
And the fact that it was a costly venture for us to have our own network, that was really dragging the whole thing down. Well, I mean, it's a very long story.
Those San Francisco offices, in and of themselves, were a costly venture.
You don't go into the black in just a few years of having your own network. You know,
sure,
it's expensive, and you come from that world in your degree, but and broadcast these things, and they, quite frankly, it was a good plan had they been properly funded for 10 years to do it. But yes, is the pack over? I don't think so. I think what they're going to do is they're going to go pick out some plum schools from the AAC and some other conferences. You saw today, I don't know if you saw Klyakoff work in these other schools. He's also tried to suggest a merger with the Mountain West, but the Mountain West has a poison pill. That is, if you leave the Mountain West, there's a $32 million penalty. Now they're trying to figure out a way to maybe fix that. But yes, it's got. I think the Pac-12, in order to survive, has got to figure out, kind of be spread out like the other conferences are across other time zones, so you can get more eyeballs to see you play in your East Coast and Midwest teams.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's probably why the super what's going to lean into these super conferences.
Yeah.
Coming eventually, it will be regional. It'll be like the West, the Midwest, the
Well, yeah, you'll have
the Atlantic, et cetera,
right,
et cetera.
but you'll have 2 or 3 pods within it. Now, there's some really good ideas about this thing called travel pods. They're talking about where a team will go on the road and stay on the road and kind of work instead of having to come back and back and forth and back and forth, which is really tough on a team.
Hockey does that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they're thinking about. So, listen, I think Klyakoff was put in a really tough situation. He got dealt a very bad hand. I know he's a really smart guy, and he's respected amongst the presidents, but he's got his work cut out now for him with the fact
Well,
that,
if he was so smart, he shouldn't have gotten himself in a position. But
well,
we won't tug at that thread. We won't kick him while he's down.
No,
because there's plenty of blame to go around as far as the school presidents being too greedy and wanting more than really what their value was worth.
I'm just gonna
then schools like USC wanting a bigger piece of the pie, and then ultimately leaving and taking little brother UCLA with them.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to say it, and this is, if you really dig into this, folks, big old bad USC was broke, and even UCLA was even more broke. I mean, to the tune of $100 million.
Yes.
And these teams had really there was no other way in order to keep this thing going. They had to do something. They were so broke after COVID. And in fact, UCLA's problem started before COVID. USC had.
You don't get yourself into $300+ million worth of debt.
No,
overnight. That wasn't. COVID just strengthened the debt, but it really didn't cause it.
And in USC's case, they had all these facilities they had to pay for, and that was going downhill, and then nothing was collected during COVID. And then they had big lawsuits against the doctor who was with the sexual assault stuff. It was ugly of it, yeah. And so there was a lot of stuff that precipitated that. But really, once that happened, in fact, I contend that once Texas and Oklahoma made their move to the SEC, the game changed from checkers to chess. And our leadership and the PAC leadership did not understand the game was changing.
Yeah, they didn't react fast enough.
They did not. No,
I totally agree on that.
And I think we've got a situation where what happened was it came down to, Crow was very, very. I'll just tell folks that you might not know this, but as much as you thought U of A was going to leave and they were saying we're going to get out of here, that was never going to happen because the regents who pay for all this said, no, you got to go together. And that was kind of lost in all this. And I have had friends.
Yeah, that's something that some people may not know. The Arizona Board of Regents control the spending
of
ASU, Arizona, and NAU. And they did not want to separate ASU and U of A.
So
U of
A was never leaving.
You're right. Arizona was not leaving without ASU.
Crow was adamant. Crow liked the prestige of the PAC, the academia, but quite frankly, the man with the biggest checkbook, Phil Knight at Oregon. So this was really about Crow and Phil Knight, and and I think they had a tacit sort of, well, if you stay, we're staying. Because if you think about it, if Oregon would have stayed in this thing, even at $23 million a year that deal's on the table, they had enough deep pockets to see it through and win and get into the top 12 teams in the tournament, right? They probably would have won with USC leaving, and they probably would have eventually won the PAC and got themselves. They would have Utah to contend, but they would have gotten into the 12. But as soon as I think Phil ran the numbers and said we got to wait maybe 2 years in order to get to 32 million, he said, screw it. I'm not going to play the long game. He got out, and once he folded, everybody else folded because that was the key. That was the guy at the poker table with the biggest stack of chips.
Yeah, there it is. And couple that with USC and UCLA leaving, taking the Southern California market with them. yeah, it was pretty much over at that point. And we'll see if the Pac-12 can ride out the storm. And they're talking about adding schools like San Diego State, who, like you mentioned, they were supposed to join. They were already
Yeah.
announced they were leaving the Mountain West
until they found out it was costing them $32 million to get out.
Well, they could have gotten out for 17 if they'd done it before July 1st, and they nobody could pull the trigger. Now it's up to 34, and then SMU. There's been talks of Boise State, Fresno State, some of those other schools. We'll see what the Pac-12 does, and it'll be interesting to see what these other schools do. Do Washington State and Oregon State bite the bullet and join the Mountain West? But their team deal is only $4 million a year.
Oh, there's some teams.
Did Cal and Stanford go independent, like Notre Dame and the service academies?
Mm-hmm.
Can they afford to do that?
Well, I think there's enough of remember, the TV market that watches that stuff is sizable. But there's plenty of teams, like you say, making 4, 5, 10 million a year, would love to come into to 22 million a year on the Apple deal. So yeah, I think they can cobble together something. Whether it's not going to be SC UCLA anymore. They'll play each other. And just like we'll play U of A.
Yeah.
Those things are still not going to change, folks.
No. Of course not.
What bums me out is the traditional Rose Bowls we know it. That's going to be over.
Well, that's the other thing too, and with the expanded playoff, kind of the traditional bowl games are kind of out the window. Most of those are getting folded into the playoff as postseason games.
Yes, 12 teams
for the tournament. Well, it's 8.
It's 8 now. 12 in 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, it'll probably go to 12, but it's just going to be 8 for the time being. Yeah. But it's college football is a changing, people, and change is part of life. But we all kind of figured it would be happening at some point. I just didn't think we didn't think it would happen quite this quickly and this drastic. It's an ever-changing landscape, and with the money being thrown around and being involved, you had to know that it was going to come down to this at some point. That maybe not quite so soon, but that's the name of the game. You got to pull the trigger when the time comes, and it came. And in 2024, things are going to look a lot different in the college football landscape.
Yeah,
with some of these teams.
The good news is that Congress has taken up NIL. There will be some changes and a leveling of the playing field at some point legislatively, because clearly it's still being used. NIL is being used as an inducement, and that's what the NC2A can't.
And a lot of these schools they got their tax filing as nonprofits.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
no, it's not the schools.
The money being thrown around, I don't think that's the case.
It's their collectives are all figured out a model of being 501c3s, sure. And so they're going to have to disperse all their money to they still have operating the money, that retained earnings, but no, they'll it's a different day. NILs comes on top of all this. Thank God there was a portal, or else we wouldn't have a team. Thank God we had a good friend of mine, Nap Lawrence, stepped up and gave $1 million to hold this together. Until we
good friend of the program. We definitely appreciate Nap. Matt had the pleasure. I know he's a good friend of yours. I've had the pleasure of meeting you a few times. Really, really good guy, and definitely a big supporter of ASU athletics.
And it was good for Kenny to mention up at camp to the press that he was
show him some love. Totally
show him some love, and how he helped us help. We wouldn't have a team without him this year. But I expect a lot more things to happen. I'll tell you, behind the scenes, there's some really good stuff coming on NIL, and I'll be involved in it on next, what is it, Monday? Yeah, Monday. I'm going to be in a big meeting about it.
Not to toot your own horn, but
we're working on some stuff. We're working on some really good stuff, folks, for NIL.
The Big John, always good talking football with you, and it's a new day. I mean, it certainly is a new day, but we're still going to be here talking ASU football, regardless of whatever conference we're in here on Running with the Devils. And we'll talk everything. We'll break everything down in our opening show. We usually go about almost 2 hours. We usually don't like to go quite that long.
That's the big one.
When you got that much to talk about, you got 50 new players to talk about, you got the schedule to break down, got to give our season predictions as far as our breakout players,
Breakouts.
We're gonna, like I said, the schedule, all of that. We will break it all down, and we'll preview the Southern Utah Thunderbirds Week 1 opponent. So, be sure to tune in because it's gonna be a long one. But if you love ASU football the way we do, we'll get into the minutia of it. We'll break it down to the DNA, and we're going to be talking, and we'll talk all about it. Tell you about who all these new players are. It's like that Harry Doyle line from Major League. A lot of new faces in Chief Wahoo's tribe this year, and hopefully we'll have some names to go with those faces before their first at bat. That's kind of the position that we're taking here with some of these with all these new players at ASU. I know I had to go to my roster to look at some of the numbers a few times up at Camp T. Probably will have to on the 31st as well for Week 1. But looking forward to it. I cannot wait to see some of these new players ball out at Sun Devil Stadium, and I'm going to brave the heat. I know nobody likes the early games because it's so freaking hot. I don't care. I love college football. I love my ASU Sun Devils, and I don't care if it's 120 kickoff. I am going to be there, and I hope you will be too. So Absolutely. We will check in with you next week, give our full season preview. We can't wait. Thank you for joining us for our week zero. I like to call it our week 0 special here on RWD. For Big John Caldwell, I'm the Rhino, Ryan Knowles. We will see you next week. Welcome to 2023. We're going to check in with you every single week here on Run of the Devils. And we say goodnight. Forks up. Go Devils. Dilly dilly.